Yo, what's up? This is pretty damn interesting. Um, this is entitled Halloween is Pretty Damn Interesting. I'm Kenny.
I'm Lisa.
And I'm John. Um, so today, obviously, the title speaks for itself. We're just gonna hit on a few things that stood out to us, and provide our thoughts and feelings and ideas on that stuff. But we thought it'd be great for us to just kind of start off with some of the costumes that we've seen that have been interesting or hilarious, or not hilarious at all. Just stuff that has stood out to us. So. Um, what's up? What are some noticeable costumes that you all have come upon?
Okay, I don't know who this young man is, but he absolutely won Halloween this year. Um, he won. Like, if there was a trophy or a cash prize that I could give him, I would. Is the guy who dressed up as white privilege. Um, I saw it earlier today and I scrolled past and I was like, wait, hold on, let me go back. And it's just, I mean, he has a cape on and he used the starkest white paint that you could possibly find. He has a crown on. Like, it's just perfect. He's flailing his cape. Like, I don't think that I've ever seen a costume that has been this well done, this perfect for the moment. Um, and I believe that if white privilege was personified, then he would be the picture of white privilege. Not Taylor Swift, not Amy Schumer or whomever else. It would be this black man that dressed like white privilege on Halloween 2016. It was perfect. And I think that we need more of those costumes. So I'll be doing that, something like that next year. I'm going to be cultural appropriation. I don't even know how I'm going to do it. I might be all of the stereotypes in one.
But didn't he also have a crown on?
He did. He had on the
That was
crown.
what blew me. The crown. I was done.
He had a crown and a cape.
Right.
He had the locks, like the golden locks of flowing hair. Like my man was with it, man.
It was perfect. And then I think he had on like some white Stacey Adams. So I'm just like, all right, dog. It was really black at the same time because he had on Stacey Adams.
Oh,
Yeah, it was pretty good.
absolutely.
What about you?
Top five ever. You I think for me, I'm gonna do two because one I feel terrible for laughing at, but not that terrible. Um, so somebody screenshotted a Snapchat, and the caption was, "I'm gonna be y'all baby daddy," and there was no one there. It was like an empty stroller, and there was like a cap and a cup just tacked up to the wall as if they were floating and as if the person was invisible. And oh my goodness, I laughed really really hard. Oh, so yeah, that was my yeah, that was a hilarious one. That
That
was
is
equally
not what I thought you were going to say.
equally terrible. And the one that I really really loved was there are like four little girls, and each of them is in a different pose, and they're trophies. And I thought, yeah, I think there are definitely some symbolic concerns with that, but I thought it was a really creative um, idea because one was like running track, another one was like about to kick a ball, and like one was playing tennis, and I really thought that it just kind of spoke to black excellence, specifically black girl excellence. So black girl magic. So I mean, I thought that was pretty dope. So yeah. What did you think I was gonna say?
I thought you were gonna say the one I text you.
I haven't gotten it yet.
The Rachel Dolezal.
I haven't gotten it yet, man.
You didn't?
No.
Y'all, Rachel got a book. She's
Whatever.
back by popular demand.
Right.
Oh, geez.
Raggedy. That is so I'm sorry. That is just so like cultural appropriation at its finest. I'm gonna look like y'all. I'm gonna actually be y'all. But then I'm gonna write a book and tell the world how I'm actually like y'all. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. You cannot. And she did.
She won't stop. But who's gonna check her though?
The NAACP.
You mean the National Association for the Advancement of Colors? No, they ain't gonna check her.
Oh man, is that the one?
She did good work.
She's done amazing work.
I'm sure. Yeah. I'm gonna just leave that. But I did like the Rachel Dolezal costume. That was the one that took me out the most. All the way from the card carrying pose that she did to the like white-ish type of paint that she put on her face to the way she wore her hair, everything. It was just, that was probably one of the best ones. Did you get it?
With the NAACP card. Oh.
Right, the card though.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
There was, okay, I just remembered two more. One that was really funny. Did you see the dude that was dressed up like Annalise Keating?
Oh.
No,
Yeah. Y'all.
I cannot.
Y'all have to find the dude that's dressed up like Annalise Keating. Y'all have to. Yo. Okay. Oh man, I'm trying not to get like weak right now thinking about it.
I'm gonna need you to send it.
I'm gonna find it. And then there was one that really disturbed me.
Oh.
And I'm gonna hold it up to the camera because I have to hold it up to the camera because I want to see y'all's reaction. I want everybody else to see y'all's reaction to it.
Yeah, I'm worried.
Oh, jeez.
I can't wait. What happened to the screen, Kenny?
Oh, the screen went dark. What is going
What's
on?
happening?
Is she supposed to be pussy? What is?
So
Yeah.
she has on.
I mean, I see what she has on.
Yeah, she painted it.
Oh, there was
Into
the whole thing.
No, she had on a corset.
Okay,
It was
but
like a leather thing. But yeah, she painted that into a cat face.
Show it again, because I really didn't even. Because I really don't even know what's happening.
Jeez. Well, she's talented.
Thank you.
I think everyone can do that.
I just really, I don't understand. I don't understand.
I don't. I think that's a great transition into.
Well, Kenny. First of all, Kenny cut me off, so I didn't finish the good ones that I had.
My bad.
It's okay. I saw this one woman dressed as Smokey from Friday. That was really good. A really good one. And then I saw someone dressed up as Thelma from Scooby-Doo. A black woman dressed up as Thelma, which she killed it. She did a good job with that. So those are my kind of top 3 costumes, best costumes that I've seen so far.
Nice. And maybe we can upload all of these and onto our Facebook page. Yeah, and if y'all have anything that y'all want to share, please, we invite y'all to do the same. But I think that I don't know is a great transition to kind of hitting on just how people might feel when they encounter certain costumes. I'm gonna start off. I'm gonna give myself like 3 minutes to try to make this, and then slide it to y'all. But I want to, of course, start with the top. It's top 5 costumes of all time. It has to be like it's first, second, third, fourth, and fifth place. Like that white privilege joint was the best costume I've ever seen. But I already know that there are gonna be a lot of people, or have already been a lot of people who are like, I don't understand. How is that okay? But blackface isn't okay. And I think, yeah, that's such a great question. Let's talk about that. I think that historically, like obviously, there's so much baggage that comes along with blackface, um, like chattel slavery, racism. Like there were literally people who, instead of going out to find black actors, would dress up in whiteface to make fun of black people who were making fun of white people. Like that whole minstrel show era was just centered around so much of the culture, and the culture at the time was extremely explicit, racist, white supremacist, um, just interactions in our country from like top to bottom. So until like there's this hilarious bit by I can't remember my man's name, but he talks about reverse racism. He's an Australian comedian, and he's like, I don't believe, like I don't agree when people say there's no such thing as reverse racism. I believe that there's a thing, and the way that we could make it a thing for real is by inventing a time machine and going back in time and getting all of the continents of color to enslave Europeans and have them work the rice fields, and then at every conceivable moment make them hate themselves, their skin and their features, and buy into beauty standards that are black and brown and people of color, and just all of these different things that just show how complex the system of racism is. So there is no equivalence, right? There's no equivalency when you talk about there's a false equivalency when you talk about blackface and folks doing stuff like my man white privilege dude and Dave Chappelle. When you like paint your face white, there's a power dynamic there that just is not the same. Like people aren't losing their lives, and historically people haven't lost their lives for simply being white. Um, and so I mean, I think that's how we have to kind of begin that conversation. And not only that, on a regular basis, you don't have people of color doing whiteface. Like, how often does that happen? Um, Given the context, given the history of this country, it's not really funny to anyone. And generally, the only people it's really funny to tend to be white. So I think that we have to be clear and honest with that myth of equality, the great American myth of equality, and be honest and say that no, things aren't equal in many ways. There are so many examples of where things aren't equal, and historically, we were not only were we founded on that inequality, we benefited from it. So I think like anytime people try to engage in any conversation, this is one great example of when folks are like, oh no, it's not fair. Like, how come you guys get to say the N-word? Or how come you guys get to wear whiteface and we can't wear blackface and blah, 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 whatever. This is one example where we have to be like, well, okay, I would let you wear blackface if you can let people assume that I have a wonderful credit score, or assume that I'm not a criminal, or assume that the best, right? The benefit of the doubt. Give me the benefit of the doubt and not assume the worst about me when they don't know, when there is uncertainty, right? We can trade that anytime, any day. All right. So that's I guess my spiel. Y'all got some rebuts? Rebuttal?
I think it was super important because even with the Rachel Dolezal costume, the girl had on a sort of white face. And the problem lies for me, or this disconnect between that logic, is because when we see people who wear blackface, it is usually a caricature, right? And in the case of the Rachel Dolezal costume, when I shared it, someone was like, oh, let's not be hypocritical, as if to say you would be mad if somebody was in blackface, but now they're in whiteface. And I'm like, well, ultimately, Rachel Dolezal is white. So that's not making a caricature of Rachel Dolezal. If anything, she's trying to make a caricature of us, right? Um, but like you said, when we think historically about what it means to wear blackface and how it was used against Black people, um, and just every, like, the whole history, right? And things of like the N-word and all that kind of stuff, the logic just doesn't line up for me. And I think that people want so badly to poke holes in these things that they deem reverse racism without understanding what racism is at the root. This young lady putting herself in whiteface is not in any way damaging the white womanhood of Rachel Dolezal. She's not. Anybody Black that puts on anything whiteface is not damaging the whiteness or the privilege that white people have. It's just not happening. However, when you put on blackface and you have literal jet black paint on your skin and you have white lips or big pink lips, that is a caricature. And we can Google any number of those caricatures and find them. We cannot find caricatures of white people online because that's not a thing, right? And if anything, Black people being in whiteface or passing, if that's what you want to call it for us, that was always something for gain, to be better off in society. And so I think that it's not necessarily a misunderstanding of what's going on or the societal implications of it or the systemic implications of it. I think it's more so of a, well, we just want to say that y'all can't do it because y'all saying that we can't do it. Like, and that is being willfully obtuse at that point. And I think that is why the Black community gets so upset about it, because you just don't want to even acknowledge what it is. You don't want to acknowledge this whole history of what it is that your aunts and uncles and grandparents and great grandparents were up to. Straight up. Like, your granddad said nigger, and it wasn't because them was his niggas. It was because they were his niggers, literally. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I think it's just I think it's willful ignorance at that point. And that is why I don't like to give a pass to anybody, because I assume that you know what the hell you're doing. Like, I assume it.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, especially with when John was talking about, when you were talking about, oh, why is that okay when y'all do it, but we can't do it. And I think it's similar to like this concept that some of my students were like struggling with the past week. We've been talking about race and ethnicity, and they just wrote a paper reflecting on their own like racial identities and gendered identities and how they move in the world, right? And so there was a student who was basically talking about how, didn't answer the prompt, mind you, and started talking about how racial white privilege encourages victimhood in society, right? So I keep hearing like these similar arguments to even like what you were talking about, because when folks don't acknowledge that when we're talking about white privilege, and even passing to some extent, we're talking about forms of power and how they're utilized in society, right? We're not talking about just because your feelings are hurt one day, right? That's not what we're dealing with. We're talking about different elements in society that we can clearly see from data how folks benefit or lose based on the color of their skin. And we can even go a step further in talking about people of color specifically, and look at skin tone and how skin tone impacts folks' experiences with dating, with relationships, with value at jobs, all kind of stuff. So it's not, just limited to this idea of, oh, my feelings were hurt. It's about power and control, and how some groups have more power than others, depending on what their identities are. So I think that that's something that kind of came to mind. I'm also thinking about what Kenny was talking about with blackface. I'm thinking about the original Birth of a Nation from 1915, and how that was just the depiction of Black people in there was completely stereotypical. And it was probably the foundation of stereotypes, right? Whether it was watermelon, desiring white women, all these different things, and how that was kind of held to a standard, right? Like, oh, this is why you should be afraid of Black people in the United States. So I think that those are like some of the things that I was just kind of reflecting on as you all were talking. But I wanted to just revisit something that we started to talk about before we got live, which was thinking about, like, what do we do when we see costumes that are, people are in blackface, or people are appropriating other cultures, like, what are some of the strategies that we can use individually, and then hopefully collectively, right, like together, even if we're not in the same space. And so one of the things that we kind of came up with was documenting it, right? Everyone has a phone, everyone has a camera. So even just taking a picture of it, even if that person, maybe they don't notice it, or you don't want to engage with that person. And I think it's like a microaggression, right? So just thinking about, like, if you want to process it now in real time, or do you want to wait, process it later with someone that you trust and care about, as opposed to like coming off as confrontational or anything of that nature. So I think that I would probably like ask them, what are they doing? But that's just me. I think it's the sociologist in me, not necessarily anything else. But also for like, because when I see things like this, it's like, okay, this is just one more costume that I can add to the list of being racist or appropriating culture of people of color. So that's one of the things that I wanted to touch on too. And in thinking about how the only time, I think Kenny, you mentioned it before we got on, was the fact that all of the models are white in the stores, even if they have afros or whatever. So, I mean, like, what? I mean, it just seems like a very interesting time of year, I guess. And it's the only time that they being non-Black people, can touch our hair.
And ultimately, that representation signifies to people who are not a part of that culture to say, it's okay. You can do it.
Right.
It's okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You see these women who are obviously European with these ridiculously stereotypical Native American costumes, or they are Foxy Brown and they have these afros, or they have all of these things, right?
Cleopatra, right? That's another one that we keep
Cleopatra.
seeing.
Any type of non-white character is portrayed on these packages by a white person, and that signifies that it's okay.
Right.
And so people understand that to mean that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's going to take a really, really, really strategic move to kind of stop these companies from doing it, first of all, because they're the ones that are putting it out. And of course, they're like, we make all this money, we don't need to listen to y'all. But ultimately, like, I've always been a proponent of, I don't have a problem with you doing something as long as you do it right. And I think it was healthy that you brought up that, there was a black person that dressed up like one of the Scooby-Doo characters. Well, we know none of the Scooby-Doo characters were black. That doesn't mean that they can't be Velma or they can't be Shaggy, right? It's okay. If you have on a red and white striped shirt and you have on round glasses and you have on a red hat, we know you're Waldo.
Right.
You don't have to paint yourself white to be Waldo. Just like you don't have to paint yourself black to be Foxy Brown. Like, you don't have to do that. You know what I'm saying? That's not a thing. And so even if people just understand Rachel Dolezal in the back, if you're out there, you could be the NAACP president and be white. It's okay. Like, you can advocate for black people. Though, I mean, abolitionists, like, they advocated for non-slavery. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's okay. And I think that people feel like they have to go all the way. Like,
well, and they do, right? They take it to an extreme and try to get away with it. And that's part of the issue.
I feel like another example that came up as you all were talking was I saw a kid dressed up as Malcolm X. And I don't know if you all have seen this, but it was a white kid. He had the glasses, and he had a suit on. And somebody had to ask, "Hey, who are you supposed to be?" And the kid, according to Facebook, said that I'm Malcolm X. And I was like, "Oh, that's pretty dope." And even though I didn't know exactly who he was initially, I think that's much less important than him putting on blackface and being offensive and me still not knowing who he was.
Right.
And I think that, like you said, like you all have been saying, there are so many different ways to still be great and not offensive at the same time. And I just don't think that we value that as a society enough. And, that's evidenced by people's response to things like political correctness. Like, there have been things that we've been doing for a long time in this country, and they haven't been right. And now folks are upset that we can't do those wrong things anymore. That's how I see people when they get pissed off about political correctness. That's pretty much how I see folks. But story for another day. So just to kind of like tag on with what you were saying in terms of like what can we do to immediately change this stuff when it happens. I know on my campus we have bias incident reports, and so I think it's a little idealistic to expect for you to file that and then assume that you'll never have to experience that again.
Right.
Fortunately, but I do think that what you can do is, file that, and we have documentation so that we can begin to build a case. And unfortunately, that strategic approach that Kenny was talking about earlier, that's kind of how we have to approach things when it comes to issues about bigotry and racism and sexism and all these other types of things. And the other thing I would say is I wonder what it will look like for people to kind of call their congressman or email a company who is selling clothes and selling costumes where white people are modeling people of color, modeling in places where people of color should really be, right? And where there's cultural appropriation taking place. Like, I wonder what it would look like if more people wrote an email or spoke directly to the manager or even emailed their congressman. And we did it in droves and consistently over a long enough period of time to really create some change, because there are laws on the books for really ridiculous things. And I don't think it's ridiculous for people to have some type of consequence, where not like some type of consequence for this kind of stuff, because this stuff is a microaggression that builds up over time. And it's like Sue says, it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's still painful. It's a slow, painful death, and people treat it and dismiss it like it's not a big deal. But a lot of small things over time can create really big effects.
And
Right.
There's this
I was thinking.
go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, I was just gonna say, in thinking about like microaggressions, I would disagree. I don't think these are I don't think the cultural appropriation costumes are microaggressions. I think they're macroaggressions, right? Like, they're visually appalling, visually triggering. You have no warning, right? if you see someone in blackface, you know, on a day like today. So I think they're macroaggressions, right? They're overtly racist. They're overtly problematic, and people attempt to like dismiss it by saying, "Oh, it's just my costume. Oh,
Right.
it's just my costume." You know? So I think different things of that nature. One of my students even said, like, "Oh, my next door neighbor, his roommate, they had a really good costume." And I was like, oh, okay, what was it? They were like, well, his roommate's Mexican, so he went as a taco. And I was like, what? He went as a taco, and then the other roommate who was white went as hot sauce. And I'm just like, I don't co-sign on any of this. So like, I'm just like this. I was waiting to hear like a great costume, and instead it was like, even though I visually didn't have to see it, it was still like very problematic. So yeah, I mean, that's what I was gonna say. What were you gonna say, Kenny?
We talked about
The hot sauce messed you up.
the taco, yeah.
Yeah, just right.
Yeah. So I also want to throw out there that even though we say you don't have to be, you don't have to like take on blackface you don't have to take on blackface. I don't want you to always think that that is okay. I saw a picture of a white girl. I assume she was in a sorority. I want to say it was Newberry College. And the reason I say that is because the screenshot that I saw was of her Instagram, and her location said Kappa Alpha Order, as in their house, the fraternity Kappa Alpha Order, and it said Newberry College, and she dressed up like a Q dog, and I was like, yeah, you didn't put on blackface. Yes, you didn't. You made sure that you didn't. However, comma.
Right.
Ma'am.
But wait, was she outside the house or she was in the house?
She was in the house, but hell, she don't live there. She was outside at some point, and I'm pretty sure she was like, well, I didn't put on blackface, so it's okay. Omega Psi Phi is a historically male black fraternity. Ma'am, it's the implication of what you're doing. That's not okay, because if I had wind-tossed hair and I put on a big sorority shirt and I dressed up like a Tri-Delt, even if I didn't put on whiteface, you'll be like, is that how you think Tri-Delts look? You know what I'm saying? Like, it would still be like, wow, Kenny, like, that's kind of a lot. Like, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? Like,
and I think it also speaks to just like how there are some cultural subtleties that you will not understand unless you are a part of the culture. Right. And I guarantee you that there's no black person who has been to college or has been exposed to Black Greek letter organization culture at all who would even think to do something like that out of respect for the organizations that emerged from that community. And I think that with you not being a part of the community, you're like, oh, well, I know enough to know that blackface isn't wrong. Like, this is assumption, right? This is assuming her thought process goes along these lines. Okay, I know blackface isn't okay, but maybe I really respect the Qs. Maybe I really like the Qs. Let me dress up like a Q to show admiration, or because I highly doubt. I'm gonna assume the best case scenario, matter of fact, is, hey, I really like the Qs. Worst case scenario is I'm trying to make fun of the Qs, right?
Right.
Either way, like no one who's a part of Black culture, Black Greek letter organization culture, or Black college culture would ever think to do that. So that's a clear difference that is subtle to someone who's not a part of the culture.
It's a huge lacuna there, right? Like, and this gap in culture and how we deal with it, because I see white boys all the time walking around in Delta Zeta shirts or Tri-Delt or Kappa Kappa Gamma on the same side. I see white girls walking around in Fiji shirts, Phi Gamma Delta shirts, and whatever else. That's something that they do in Black culture, if you are not in Kappa Kappa Psi National Honorary Band Fraternity Incorporated, and this goes for black, white, Asian, Puerto Rican, polka dot, stripe, it don't matter. Don't wear my letters because you're not in my organization.
Right.
Don't wear my letters. Don't wear the letters spelled out. No, nothing. Don't do that. And I think that there is almost, I guess, a fluidity that I want to say as far as, well, I'm in this, but, I went to their event and they have a shirt and all that type of stuff. Like, that's just not something we do, right? And so, especially not to, one, be the complete opposite of Q-Dog. You're not a black man. And not to say all Q-Dogs are black men, because there are some white Q-Dogs, but majority of them are black men. You're a white woman.
I'm having a difficult time with all of this because, like,
but then she was at the Kappa Alpha Order House. They're like one of the most notoriously racist fraternities out there. Like,
I'm just not. I think that just even without blackface, like, what does it mean that you are doing this? Like,
that you're cute off for Halloween. That's not cool. What?
What you say?
Yeah. Like, why? Why would you?
Right. And I think I'm just over the idea of, like, trying us on as costumes with or without blackface. Like, I don't, because if all of a sudden maybe this young man has been studying Malcolm X for, a year. I don't know. And that's who he wanted to go as, maybe. But I don't know how I feel about that one either. Because if people don't collectively care about us through all the rest of these days of the year, then why all of a sudden is it okay to talk about Malcolm X? You know what I'm saying? Like, why is it okay to talk about the brothers in fraternities? Like, I don't know if you're not able to have conversations outside of Halloween about these particular topics and others. I'm sure we could list a whole bunch, and I'm sure people watching would be able to send us a lot too. But I mean, like, it's just so empty. It's like, what are you even doing? I know, like, I think it was last year, my niece went as Harriet Tubman, and she had like a bag, and in the bag she had a gun, and people were like, "Oh, well, who are you?" And she was like, "Harriet Tubman," and they were like, "What? Harriet Tubman carried a gun? Like, why don't y'all know?" She's like, "Y'all didn't know Harriet Tubman had a gun?" Like, like, so there's this baby, like 6 years old, 7 years old, teaching the people about her costume because she had studied it for a year. Her mom made sure of that. There was a lot of effort and work and time put into what the costume was going to be. So, I mean, that thoughtful engagement, I think, makes a difference. And it comes through when you talk to, like, the kid or the person who, is wearing a costume. So.
And I just, man, I guess we should, like, shift towards, like, closing thoughts. Because this conversation obviously can go on, and we can keep talking about it for a very long time. We probably will. But for me, I think you make a lot of great points, and at the same time, because, like, I don't fully agree with saying, like, there has to be a certain level of thoughtfulness when we're talking about engaging in Halloween. Because for some people, Halloween is just, let me trick or treat, get candy, and wear something that I don't wear on a normal basis. So I do think there should be more intentionality, and I, of course, think that you shouldn't be offending people with, like, if your costume is offensive, I think as a citizen of a society that is supposed to be civil, you should be willing to engage in conversation around why it's offensive and be willing to at least consider changing it. I think, if we are indeed supposed to be a part of this same nation together, I think that should be something that it shouldn't be a shutdown conversation. Like, oh, you're being overly sensitive. Like, that should not be the response that people get. But I do think that Halloween for some people is just that. Like, hey, let's go have fun. Let's go get candy. So, and then even with the young white kid who dressed up as Malcolm X, I think you make a great point, because if we're talking about emptiness, and like, why are you doing it, and why do you care now, and like, what is the intentionality behind it? I think that is very important. And I guess on the other end of that spectrum, if we're talking about things being positive and imitation being a sincere form of flattery. Like I kind of see it as, I think it's really interesting that you chose that. Tell me why you did. And if the answer, is pretty dope, I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. I appreciate the fact that, you know, something that most people just wouldn't take the time to even realize. So I guess that's kind of my stance on that. But yeah. And those are really my closing thoughts. I guess it's more complex than we give it light to, but if you're like, it makes you an asshole. If you keep doing it and you know that it pisses people off and you know that's offensive and you're not willing to engage in constructive conversation about it, I mean, that's like asshole behavior, straight up. And that's my stance, I guess.
Yeah, I'm kind of at the point where it's, I'm like I said, I'm not sure how to feel about the young man dressing up as Malcolm X, but I think it's just important for us to not look at these costumes as single instances, but more as like, collective things that are happening that we're kind of noticing, and then analyzing it from like that collective standpoint. It's very clear that I'm a sociologist and you're a therapist, right? Like we can kind of see just the way our brain processes these conversations is really interesting. So yeah, I'm just kind of thinking about like some of the good things that I've noticed with Halloween. And I didn't say this for my best costume because I wanted to save it, but there's this picture, I don't know if y'all have seen it, of there are four black dads taking their daughters to, I don't know if it was preschool or kindergarten, but they were really young. And it was like a dad dressed up. They were all superheroes. So it was the cutest thing that I've seen. And it kind of destroys the myth around, Black fathers not being present and things of that nature. So I did see that floating around on Facebook. I think that was probably the most insightful and appropriate, happy, Black joy costumes that I've seen. And as far as just like closing thoughts in general, I mean, I think we just have to consider like, what is the purpose of Halloween? Maybe, I mean, mostly I think people see it as a time for kids to get candy and for women to get naked, no matter what the costume is. I'm just saying, Kenny, yes, I said that.
I mean,
So, I mean, thinking about like, what does it mean to engage in this particular holiday? It's good for us to even just have this conversation on cultural appropriation, because if we don't have it, who's going to have it? And then just tying it in with our thoughts and feelings in our day-to-day. So, Kenny, what do you think?
So y'all have heard from the therapist. You've heard from the sociologist. Now the literature/cultural studies person is going to say, as far as people who dress up as, like, let's since we're talking about the little Malcolm X boy, I'm gonna call him Malcolm Little. I think that's a little bit more appropriate for him. I'm gonna call him Malcolm Little. I think that I'm inclined to immediately look at the things that Malcolm talks about in his literature, right? And I think about, immediately I thought about Zoe Saldana and Nina Simone. And I'm like, well, a lot of people were saying, like, you are saying Zoe should be able to do this because she'll do a great job as an actress. And we're like, okay, cool. She's a good actress. However, who Nina Simone was and how she looked was imperative. It was necessarily a part of her politics, right? And so, not to say that Malcolm X would be mad at Malcolm Little for dressing like him, but it does raise a question: why would a little white boy want to be Malcolm X, or why would a parent a white parent allow their child to be Malcolm X, especially one who is educated or understands the politics of Malcolm X or his rhetoric or whatever it is that he stood for. Not to say that white people can't, like I said, be on the side of black people, be an ally and understand and be hip and be down. I'm not saying that at all, but understanding Hitler, even though I think Hitler is one of the greatest leaders who ever lived, understanding Hitler's rhetoric and how he used it, I would never dress up as Adolf Hitler because Adolf Hitler did not like people like me. Period. I would never be Donald Trump. I would never be a huge number of people simply because I know how they felt about me. And I also wouldn't allow my children to be Christopher Columbus. No, like I just wouldn't. And I'm pretty sure Malcolm Little's parents felt, that it was appropriate, and he probably did study him. And I'm glad that, Malcolm Little is woke. He might eventually be like Malcolm V or Y or Z one day. But so I think it's great that he even understands who Malcolm is and understands the human enough to not feel like he's this villain. But I'm kind of with Lisa. I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I'm not sure. It is really funny seeing y'all on mute. It's so funny. Can y'all take it off mute so I can hear y'all laugh?
Oh my God. But wait, you took me out with the Malcolm. First it was Malcolm Little, and then it was Malcolm Y or Z. And then
He's
I was
not
like,
X.
yes, Malcolm Y. That's what
Malcolm Y. He's
Malcolm
not
Y.
Malcolm
Y.
X.
That
He's
just
Malcolm
hit.
Y.
That
right,
just.
right.
Oh, Malcolm Y. Why? Why, Malcolm?
Why? Why are
And
you
you know
Malcolm?
what else I want to say about his costume? Like, was there a bullet hole in the back of the suit? That's what I want to know.
Oh.
And
All right. So everyone,
listen.
Were you done with your closing thoughts?
No, I was gonna say that I feel like in these moments, whether people decide to use blackface or not or be offensive, like just because you put on blackface doesn't mean we're gonna know who you are anyway. Like if I had a little haircut and I had a little mustache right here, if I was a completely blank canvas, I could be Adolf Hitler and I could be Martin Luther King Jr. Just because I color myself doesn't mean I'm gonna be who you think I am. So even if you paint yourself black, little girl who wants to be Foxy Brown, that does not mean that you're Foxy Brown in that moment. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. So
right, you need more creativity.
You do. And ultimately, like, you need a t-shirt that says I am Foxy Brown tonight. But I'm gonna try and take into account what y'all said. I have a fully charged phone because I'm about to go on Bourbon Street, and the amount of costumes that I know are gonna be offensive, I can just see them in my head right now. And after I take in some of the spirits of Bourbon Street, I might have to stop, drop, and roll. Just so people think I'm crazy and they'll walk away from me. But if I see the wrong costume, y'all might have to come get me out of this parish. Because I'm not going to have no nice conversation.
I appreciate your respect for the language of the area that you're in. And yeah, the parish thing, I rock with it. Man, this whole conversation has just been pretty damn interesting.
Well,
hey, so man, if you made it this far, we appreciate you for tuning in. And this was truly a treat. Yeah, no pun intended. Yeah, pun intended.
Right.
Yeah, no tricks. All right. But yeah, so just stay tuned. We got more good stuff coming your way, and please let us know what else you're interested in, how we can be helpful to art, not only art cause but yours too. So we're just black scholars trying to be great and trying to find ways to incorporate our theory and our practice in pretty damn interesting ways. So, I'm John.
Lisa,
Kenny, say no to candy corn. It's nasty.
All right,
I'm
until
so
next
done
time.
with you right now, Kenny.
until,
Good
next,
night, y'all.
until next time, be great and stay interested. Peace.